Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Eating in the Light of the Moon: How Women Can Transform Their Relationship with Food Through Myths, Metaphors, and Storytelling, by Anita Johnston, Ph.D. Narrated by Arika Rapson. Daylight is one thing, moonlight another. Things take on a different look beneath the moon than beneath the sun. And it well might be that to the spirit, the light of the moon would appear to yield the truer illumination. Thomas Mann. Preface. My interest in disordered eating evolved out of my clinical work with women's issues in therapy, those issues related to the experience of being female in our society today. Disordered eating emerged as a struggle prevalent among women. As more and more girls and women with eating disorders came to see me, I found myself fascinated by them, because, contrary to what I had been led to believe by my colleagues, and what much of the literature had indicated, they were not terribly difficult, resistant clients, but some of the brightest, most talented, most creative people I had ever met. This, however, was not how they perceived themselves. They saw themselves as incompetent, worthless, and unattractive. Intrigued by this discrepancy between my perception and theirs, I listened carefully to their stories. By offering up their life stories for scrutiny, these women were hoping to find some clues, some answers to the origin of this mysterious obsession that consumed their lives. One woman would tell of the abuse she suffered from her father, while another would describe a father who encouraged her and applauded her every accomplishment. One woman would describe an alcoholic mother who was preoccupied with survival and had little nurturing to give her, while another would tell of her experience with a doting, sometimes overprotective mother. There were women who suffered the loss of a parent through death or divorce, and women whose families remained close-knit units. For every tale of woe, there was a tale of a life with few apparent hardships. While no particular pattern emerged from the details of their stories, I began to notice an underlying theme, a certain flavor to their diverse experiences that remained constant. The common thread seemed to be a pervasive sense of not quite fitting in, of not quite seeing things the way others did, of being a misfit. I learned that as very young girls, these women were bright and gifted, and had an exceptional ability to perceive subtle realities. More often than not, a woman who struggled with disordered eating was once a girl who saw the invisible, who read between the lines, who sensed when things were not right. She noticed when people said one thing but did another. She could discern certain patterns of behavior and anticipate what was to come next. She knew when someone was being insincere or dishonest. Her family, for one reason or another, did not appreciate her gift. They did not want to be confronted with discrepancies in their behavior, or to address what seemed to be odd concerns or avant-garde ideas. They did not want to deal with her ultra-sensitivity to emotional undercurrents, and at times they were threatened by her precociousness. Whenever she spoke the truth or questioned what was going on, she received a very clear message, often nonverbal, that this outspoken and questioning behavior was not okay, and even dangerous to the stability of the family. Since this child's survival depended on fitting into the family, she had to find a way to dim her light so her parents wouldn't be overwhelmed, so her brothers and sisters wouldn't feel jealous and reject her, so serious problems in the functioning of the family wouldn't be revealed and result in its possible disintegration. She collaborated with other family members by taking a position that something was wrong with her perception, that something was wrong with her. After all, no one else in the family saw things the way she did. As she searched for something to distract her from her discomfort and to diminish her perceptions, the girl began to feel the first stirrings of her obsession with food. She may have been a young girl who intuited from her mother's behavior that her parents' marriage was a loveless one. This frightened her so much that she ate compulsively in an attempt to stuff down the truth that threatened to tear her family apart. Even though she suffered greatly from schoolyard taunts about her weight, at least she was able to keep this secret from entering her awareness on a daily basis and from being revealed to other family members. She may have been a girl who discerned that in order to please her ambitious, workaholic stepfather, she needed to squelch her natural artistic tendencies. She discovered that keeping herself in a constant state of hunger could distract her from any need for creative expression that might cause conflict between them and interfere with her achievement of the goals he valued. Although her anorexia eventually created much concern and distress in her family, at least she was able to maintain her much-coveted connection with him by hiding this differentness from herself as well as from him. She may have been a girl gifted with beauty, intelligence, and lots of friends who noticed that her single mother withdrew affection whenever she became excited about her social activities and that her older sister acted resentful whenever she was successful academically. She discovered that having a problem with food kept their feelings of jealousy at bay because they would no longer be threatened by her perfection. Having something with which to struggle enabled her to join their Ain't Life Tough club and reduce the chances of their rejecting her. For each of these girls, an obsession with food and fat created a new focus in her life. She could count calories and agonize over every pound rather than feel her deeper pain and fears. As she intensified her struggle with her body, her fear of being different and seeing things that others did not, and the feelings of loneliness that come with not quite fitting in, receded into the background. Problems with food and fat, as painful as they could be, appeared to have a simple solution compared to the other problems in her life. All she had to do was stick to a diet and everything would be okay. Messages from the media and a culture obsessed with thinness supported this belief system. As she became more deeply embroiled in the struggle with food, fat, and dieting, however, this simple solution became more and more elusive. She knew what she needed to do. Lose more weight, but couldn't figure out how. And so she developed an image of herself as flawed, incompetent, and helpless. Once again, the society she lived in supported her contention that she was, indeed, inadequate because she lacked the willpower she needed to control her body. The gift of her vision became buried beneath layers of self-doubt and self-loathing. Upon becoming a woman, she found herself with the capacity to sense when things weren't quite right, to pick up on subtleties in conversations or tensions in relationships, to notice patterns in behavior or inconsistencies between what others said and did. But her interpretations of what she perceived became distorted by her self-doubt and low self-esteem. If she detected hostility beneath a friend's helpful criticism, she decided that she was being too sensitive. If her husband seemed troubled and withdrawn, she figured he was upset with her and no longer found her attractive. If she became angry at her mother's attempts to manipulate her, she assumed that she was overreacting. And she would quell her emotional distress with thoughts of food. With her eating behavior out of control and her self-esteem shattered, she found her way to the Anorexia and Bulimia Center of Hawaii, which I had co-founded with 2 other women. Upon entering therapy, she entered the labyrinth of recovery. A labyrinth is an ancient and mysterious archetype. It consists of one pathway that loops back repeatedly upon itself, reaches the center, and then winds its way back out again. Unlike a maze, there are no barriers, false turns, or dead ends. In many ancient religious traditions, the labyrinth was a powerful symbol of the journey of life, death, and rebirth. It was used as a meditation tool whose path would lead to one's own center and then back out into the world. The women on the road to recovery from disordered eating began with a journey that required them to follow a twisting, turning, winding path to their centers. It required them to leave behind old perceptions of themselves that they had adopted from others and to reclaim their own inner authorities. They had to listen to the voice from within to give them guidance and support as they searched for their true thoughts, feelings, and desires. They found themselves letting go of all expectation of linear progress, disengaging the rational mind, and embracing the power of their emotions and intuition. By listening to myths, fairy tales, and old folk tales, They learned the language of metaphor, a language they needed in order to understand and absorb their inner truths, to find their own mythic reality, and to understand the deep wisdom of their personal stories. As they walked this labyrinth, there were times they felt trapped, lost, bored, disoriented, frustrated, or anxious. But they kept on going, placing one foot in front of the other. Finding their centers, the essence of who they are as women, was not the end of the journey. They then had to exit the labyrinth, integrating this new vision with a new way of being in the world. This book is for all those who dared to view their disordered eating in a different light, so that they could reclaim their visions and their power. It includes some of the old myths, folk stories, and fairy tales I use in my work. Stories that have been used through the ages to help women find their inner truth. This book is for all those women who have dared to open to their full potential, to listen to the wise woman inside of them, to speak their truth, and to help heal this earth, and for those who want to. 1. Woman's Spirit, the Root of the Hunger. Today, more women than ever find themselves in a struggle with their weight. Diet books and programs for weight loss are a multi-billion-dollar industry. Anorexia, bulimia, and compulsive eating have reached epidemic proportions. In America, millions of women struggle with anorexia and bulimia, and thousands of them die from complications resulting from these disorders. Statistics indicate that 95% of those who have been diagnosed with eating disorders are female. Obsession with the body, continual dieting, and excessive exercise routines have become so widespread among women that they are now considered normal behavior. Bodies sculpted by plastic surgery to look like those of prepubescent boys with breasts have become the standard for the ideal female body. Since the average model or actress is thinner than 95% of the population, most women know the frustration of living in a body that refuses to conform to the ideal. It is impossible to discuss the causes for disordered eating without questioning the experience of being female in our society today. What is going on? Studies show that American women value being thin over being successful or loved, and that most girls are unhappy with their bodies by age 13. Why are so many females so dissatisfied with their bodies? Is it because there is such an emphasis on thin, angular bodies, which very few women come by naturally? If so, why has a naturally masculine shape, broad shoulders, no waist, narrow hips, flat belly, become the ideal for the female body? Why is it that those aspects of a woman's body that are most closely related to her innate female power, the capacity of her belly, hips, and thighs to carry and sustain life, are diminished in our society's version of a beautiful woman? The answers can be found by taking a look at history from a perspective much broader than what we were taught as children. The history we were taught in school belongs to the patriarchy. It is a history that concerns itself with the struggle for power and domination. Our history books are filled with winners and losers of the great wars and the names of the men who fought in them. The history of the patriarchy is limited to the last 5,000 years. New archaeological data and research are revealing a much broader scope. Rather than reviewing civilizations in terms of centuries, researchers Merlin Stone, Maria Gimbutas, Rian Eisler, and others are looking at the process of civilization over many millennia, as far back as 30,000 years, before the advent of Judaism, Christianity, and the classical age of Greece. A long time ago, these researchers tell us, the experience of women on this earth for thousands and thousands of years was very different than it is today. In their world, that which was female and all its manifestations was honored and revered. The female side of God, in the form of the goddess, was worshipped. The spirit of the feminine was recognized as the creative life force of the earth. Its symbol was the circle, a shape that has no beginning and no end. That which was round or curved was considered beautiful. The shape of the earth, an egg, the naturally rounded, curved shape of a woman's body. That which moved in cycles was respected and honored as a source of wisdom. The seasons, the moon phases, the ebb and flow of the tides, and nature's life-death rebirth cycle were looked to for the answers to the mysteries of life. Women's wisdom, gained from their natural connection to nature through their menstrual cycle, was revered. Women were respected for the power of their intuition and their understanding of the earth's ways. This wisdom was passed on from woman to woman, from mother to daughter, for thousands of years. Time passed and things changed. A new way of perceiving the world came into being. The line came to be considered superior to the circle. A hierarchy developed. What was made by men was considered superior to what was made by nature. The circle was removed from a position of reverence and replaced by the symbol of the line, which had a beginning and an end, a top and a bottom, a superior position and an inferior position. And all things came to be valued according to their position. Those on top had more power than those on the bottom. The goddess was banished. Only the male side of God was allowed to be worshipped. The earth was no longer viewed as the sacred source of all creation. It became an object to be divided up into many square pieces for those men with the most power to own and use. Women's connection to the wisdom of the earth through her body and the cycles of nature was rejected. The power of her intuition and emotions was ridiculed. Women who taught the way of the circle, who used their connection to the earth for healing, who celebrated the feminine spirit, were imprisoned or killed. Generation after generation after generation watched their mothers and sisters burn at the stake for celebrating and embracing their feminine power. More time passed and little changed. Women still live in a society where what is masculine, linear, rational, and logical is considered superior to what is feminine, circular, intuitive, and emotional. Today's woman is a round peg trying desperately to fit into a square hole in order to survive and flourish. How does she do this? By trying to shape her body into a more angular masculine form, one that has zero fat to round off its edges. By being shamed into pretending that her menstrual blood, which once kept her so connected to the earth's ways, doesn't exist. By denying her most powerful emotions and quieting her intuitive voice. Because she has banished her feminine spirit, she lives in a state of perpetual spiritual hunger. Her starving soul yearns for nourishment, but the nourishment of the goddess, of the woman's spirit, is not available to her. All there is the food she feeds her body. Is it any wonder that she overcompensates for her starvation? Is it any wonder that in frustration she goes on strike and decides to stop eating? Is it any wonder that her body becomes a battleground for the war between food and fat? 2. The Buried Moon. Rediscovering the Feminine. This folktale is called The Buried Moon. It is about the nature of the feminine as represented by the moon. The light of the moon is soft and subtle. It gently illuminates that which is hidden, and it guides us through the dark corners of our unconscious. Long, long ago, there was a wonderful land where people loved each other, and all things in nature were honored and respected. This land was, however, surrounded by bogs and swamps, and the people feared the great pools of black bog water and squishy tufts of marsh moss that squirted out creeping trickles of green water when they stepped on them. In this land, the moon shone just as she does now, and the people depended on the light of the moon to walk about safely among the bog pools and marshes. But when she didn't shine, out came vile, evil creatures that dwelled in the darkness and went about seeking harm. When the moon heard of the treachery and terror that filled the land in her absence, she felt great sorrow and decided to see for herself if it was truly as bad as people said it was. So when the dark of the month came, she wrapped herself in a black hooded cloak, taking care to tuck in her yellow, shining hair, and went straight to the bog edge. There it was dark, all dark but for the glimmer of the stars in the pools and the light that came from her own white feet, stealing out from under her black cloak. She trembled as she made her way, stepping lightly from tuft to tuft between the greedy, gurgling water holes. Just as she came near a big black pool, her foot slipped and she would have tumbled in had she not grabbed a nearby snag to steady herself. But as soon as she touched the snag, it twined itself around her wrists and arms, holding her fast. The more she pulled and twisted, the tighter it held. As she pondered her fate, from far off in the distance she heard a faint, sobbing voice calling for help. She then heard footsteps and through the darkness saw a face with eyes wide with terror. It was a man who had strayed into the bogs. Dazed with fear, he struggled toward the flickering light that seemed to promise help and safety, unaware that he was straying farther from the path and into the black pool. Frantic to warn him, the moon struggled even harder. Though she could not free herself, she twisted in such a way that her hood fell back off her yellow, shining hair, and the beautiful light that came from it drove away the darkness. The poor traveler was so relieved to see the vile creatures retreat into the darkness and to find his path out of the marsh that he hurried on home as fast as he could. Although the moon was happy that the lost soul had found his way, she, too, wanted to be free of the bogs, and so she began to fight and pull harder than ever. At last she collapsed in exhaustion, and as she fell forward, the black hood fell over her head. So out went the blessed light, and back came the darkness and all its evil creatures. They attacked the moon with rage and spite and drove her deep down into the mud. When the sky began to show a pale gray light, the evil ones placed a large boulder on top of her and scurried away. Days and days passed, and the new moon never came. Without the moon's light, nighttime was no longer safe. Under cover of darkness, travelers got lost, things were stolen, and vile, evil creatures terrorized the land. Many people suffered. Everyone became frightened of the darkness that seemed to swallow up the land at night. The people of the land sought help from the wise woman who lived in the old mill, and she instructed them on how to find the lost moon. They trekked into the marshes, armed with stones and hazel twigs, feeling fearful and creepy, until, at last, they came to the pool beside the snag where the moon lay buried. Catching a glimpse of a thin lip of light around the boulder, they took hold of the big stone and shoved it up. For one short moment, they saw a strange and beautiful face looking up at them with gladness out of the black water, and heard the angry wail of the fleeing evil horrors. And then they saw the moon rise up into the sky, bright and beautiful as ever, making the bogs and pathways safe once again. Since ancient times, the moon has been a symbol of the feminine. It is cyclical and ever-changing with a strong sense of mystery. Its light is cool, reflective, and diffuse as contrasted with the bright, bold, and intensely focused light of the sun, which has often been associated with the masculine principle. In our culture, we value sunshine, daylight, and summertime over moonlight, nighttime, and winter. We notice if the sun is up or down, whether it will be a sunny or overcast day, but pay little attention to the moon in its phases. Likewise, we have come to value only the masculine principles of direct action, single-minded focus, clear, logical thinking, goal-oriented, competitive behavior, linear structure, productivity, and achievement. We are uncomfortable with the feminine qualities of stillness, ambiguity, and emotion. We become impatient with cooperative, relationship-oriented attitudes and see aesthetics, intuition, nurturance, and earthiness as unimportant. Many traditional cultures recognize the necessity of both masculine and feminine aspects in all life. The tale of the buried moon reminds us that there was once a time when moonlight was considered essential, when the qualities of the feminine were appreciated and valued. A time when feeling was as important as thinking. Intuition was as well regarded as logic. Being was as much valued as doing. And the journey was as significant as the destination. According to Eastern philosophies, everything in the universe is based on the polarities of yin, feminine, receptive, and yang, masculine, active energies. Yin is that which is open, yielding, connected. It embodies the intuitive, feeling, deep wisdom that comes from within. This is the feminine power that is connected to the subtle and seemingly invisible forces and rhythms of nature. It is concerned with harmony in all relationships. Yin can be symbolized by circles, spirals, or labyrinths that have no beginning and no end. Yang is active, independent, and direct. It is the logical, intellectual energy that seeks out information and strives for control. Its power comes from doing and fixing. It is associated with separation, identity, autonomy, and individuality. It can be symbolized by the arrow with its linear angles thrusting upward and outward. The tale of the buried moon warns of the danger to society when the balance between the masculine and feminine is not honored, if the feminine becomes buried, and the qualities of the masculine are considered more important than the qualities of the feminine. Great technological advances may be made, but if the feminine emphasis on feelings, relationships, and harmony is ignored, much violence and suffering can follow. This story, like many legends and tales, is more than a story with a message for the community. It speaks to our own individual psyches and warns of the dangers of neglecting the feminine within ourselves. We all, men and women, carry both the masculine and feminine principles within us and are continually challenged to develop both aspects so that they can work in harmony. Neither quality is right or wrong. Neither quality is better or more valuable than the other. Problems develop when there is an imbalance between the two, when one aspect is valued more than the other, or when one side is dominated by the other. The feminine spirit within us promotes nurturing, supportive relationships. The masculine promotes autonomy, separation, and individuality. If we develop our feminine side and not our masculine side, we may find ourselves caught up in relationships where we focus on taking care of others without setting limits and find that we lose our sense of self. If we develop only the masculine, we find ourselves caught up in competitive power struggles and feel a pervasive sense of alienation that comes from not connecting with others in a heartfelt way. Our lives become little more than a rat race. An individual who is able to perceive the bigger picture and be receptive to his or her inner guidance but cannot take action can experience as many difficulties as someone who is all action and impulse, with no inner sense of direction or meaning in his or her life. The feminine within us is that wise, intuitive voice that perceives the truth. It is the open, receptive side that receives information from within and from without, and holds it in a deep, knowing way. Her task is to be a vessel that contains our truth, our vision, our essence. The masculine within us is the part of ourselves that takes action. It is very willful, focused, and directed. It is the intellectual, rational side that explains and organizes our thoughts and feelings logically. The task of the masculine is to be a vehicle that can boldly carry our truth out into the world in a clear, straightforward way. When there is balance and these two sides act in concert, we have what is called the divine marriage, where the masculine honors and supports the feminine, providing protection for the journey out into the world. In an ideal situation, the feminine says, "I am lonely." The masculine side sits down and writes a letter to a friend. The feminine produces a dream. The masculine translates and organizes it. The feminine feels upset when a friend does something that hurts her feelings. The masculine puts those feelings into words and explains why that behavior was hurtful. The feminine says, "I am hungry." The masculine responds by getting and preparing the food or by asking, "Is this physical or emotional hunger?" We live in a society where the balance between the feminine and the masculine has not been maintained. Masculine principles have been overly encouraged, and feminine principles have been suppressed. Much emphasis is placed on goal-oriented activities, accomplishments, and productivity. Doing is more important than being. What we accomplish matters more than our manner or intent. Matters of the mind take precedence over matters of the heart. Success in money matters is respected more than success in relationships.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?